Hey everyone, you're live with Necee. I am your host, Opal Bailey. And today on my show, I have with me a friend of mine. His name is Jim. And we're going to talk about family matters, family things, and all the things that he endured in his childhood and in military life as well as his family life. So, hey Jim.
Hi.
How are you today?
Good.
Hey,
Good
thanks for coming on my show.
Sure, good to be here.
Hey, listen, I wanted to ask you a little bit. I know a little bit about you. Mm-hmm. So can you just share a little bit more so our listeners could know where you're from and all the good stuff?
I grew up in Alliance, Ohio, and with two younger sisters. And my mom didn't work, but my dad worked in a dairy, where you put the milk in the bottle. And when I was old enough, I started helping him out on Sundays because he had to work the weekends. And I would help him dump the past due milk into, milk cans and stuff like that. And I did that on Sundays probably like for 4 or 5 years. And then the boss saw me one day from the window, and he told my dad, he says, when he graduates from high school, he's got a job here if he wants it. So when I graduated from high school, I got the job. I was there for about 4 years.
And what job was that he hired you for?
I did a lot of things in the dairy. I worked in the cooler, taking the milk from the conveyor line and put them on pallets in the cooler. And then I moved up to pasteurizing technician. And pasteurizing technician. And so I had to make sure that all the milk lines were cleaned every night. There's about like 100 miles of pipes, and all the valves needed to be turned in the right direction and stuff like that, or we had a big mess if not. But I never had the mess, so I must have did something right.
You was already talented. You was already fit for the job, evidently.
Oh yeah. Yeah. From there, I worked in a restaurant for about a little over a year. I was a assistant manager, and that's where I met my wife, my previous wife.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of my waitresses, and we got married, and we were married for like 45 years or something like that. And back in 2007, she passed away. She had a hereditary disease called alpha-1 antitrypsin enzyme deficiency, and that's predominant in women. And what that enzyme does is keeps all your vital organs pliable, renews them, and her body didn't produce that enzyme. So different people, it affects different organs, but hers affected her lungs. So she only had like 20% of her lung capacity left when she passed away.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. She also worked with me after she was with me the whole time I was in the Air Force. I retired from the Air Force back in 92. I went in 72. And after I got retired from the Air Force, I started working out the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. I worked in television operations, and we filmed all the launches that went up. And every time we went out on a launch, it was like the first time.
Wow.
It was amazing, yeah.
I bet that was an interesting career. I'm not gonna say a job, but that's definitely was an awesome career.
Yeah, it was one of the best jobs I ever had. Yeah.
What made you go? We want to backtrack a little bit. What made you go in the military?
Well, when I was working in the restaurant, one of the other managers decided to go ahead and do some stuff around the restaurant, remodeling and stuff like that. He would take money out of the safe, which was allowed, and he saved the receipts and everything. But he didn't put, one day he didn't put the receipts, in the safe. So when I checked out, I was short in my balance sheet. And so I told the managers, up in Cleveland that. And whenever payday come around, they shorted me in my paycheck that amount. And I was only making $125 a week to begin with. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was you what were you bringing home if you were just making
$125 a week?
That's amazing.
Yeah, not that much. Other than my wife at the time, she helped out with her waitressing, so that helped make ends meet. So I quit that job because they would listen to reason, and I was out of work for about a month, and just so happens that my wife's brother, he was in the Air Force, and I asked him about how the Air Force was, and he said he loved it. He had to get out early because of my wife's father. His father had some medical problems, and so he got a discharge from the Air Force. So I said, okay, well, I went and talked to a recruiter, and they said, okay, sure. But there's only one problem. I only weighed 104 pounds.
No.
And I was 25.
It was that milk.
I didn't eat enough ice cream, I guess.
There you go. Lifting the pallets up.
Yeah.
So what did you do to gain weight? So evidently you had to gain weight.
So the recruiter, that was on a Friday, he said, go home, eat everything in sight, and come back Monday, and all I needed to gain was 2 pounds to meet the minimum requirements. So he said, eat a bunch of bananas and all kinds of fattening food. So I did. I ate a bunch of bananas on the way up there to the center where where they accept you, and I gained the 2 pounds, and I weighed 106, and so they let me in.
This is awesome. This is an awesome story.
Yeah. So I went in. I didn't know what I was going to do, and they offered me they wanted to know if I wanted to become a policeman. And I always liked policemen, and so I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll sign up for that." So I went out for 15 years. I was a security policeman. I went to my first assignment was in California, and I was there a year and a half, and then they sent me to Thailand, to where I was base security over there. That was in 74 and 75. So while I was there in Thailand, my mom, she got gravely ill, so the Red Cross had me come home. So I was home for about 3 weeks, and then I had to go back to Thailand to my duty station. So I was back at work for one day, and I was up in a 40-foot tower. that one particular time, and the patrol came by and says, "Come on down. Red Cross wants you home. Want you to go home. Your mom's, I guess, she's ill." So I flew back to the States, and it took me 2 days to get back to Ohio where my mom was.
Mm-hmm.
And I got there, and she was already in a coma. I went in, I got to see her and talk to her. And then I said, well, I was still in uniform from traveling, so I wanted to go home, grab a bite to eat, change clothes, and go back up to the hospital. So while I was at home changing clothes, my sister called and said that she passed away. So I was there for another 2 weeks for the funeral. And on the way back to Thailand, my plane broke down, of all places, Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii.
Wow.
And I just so happened that my brother was stationed up on the hill at Fort Shafter. He was in the Army. So I called him. I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" He said, "Sitting here reading the paper." I said, "Well, come get me." He said, "What? Where are you?" And I told him, and he says, "Okay, I'll be down in about a half hour." So I spent all that day and most of the next day before my plane was fixed, so I could go, travel.
In Hawaii.
Yeah, in Hawaii. I went snorkeling, went down, found that I could, I went with my sister-in-law to a fish market, and she showed me a few things. And drove down Leaky Highway. Everybody else says like, but it's not. It's Leaky. Mm-hmm. So I said goodbye to my brother and his family, and I headed back to Thailand. And that was in mid-July. And so from mid-July till mid-July of 74 till February 75, my tour was up.
Mm-hmm.
And so toward the end of my tour, I was able to go to the base pool every day, and cool off, because we just got over some monsoons and stuff like that. Mm. So I got my orders for my next base. Where did they send me? North Dakota in February.
Oh, wow.
So
that was exciting. No.
I think I slept in my long underwear for 3 weeks. I mean, going from tropical, in February to sub-zero in North Dakota. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I worked missile security there in North Dakota. And it stayed pretty cold. I mean, summer was like from 8 to 4 on August 12th. That was it.
Wow.
But
how did you deal with all the challenges that you face, with your mom passing, and then you still having to go back and fulfill, your military duties?
Yeah, I flew 100,000 miles that year. Wow. I was so tired, and it was all that I could do was, to get my strength back, So I just tried to ignore that and go about my duties like I needed to. Mm-hmm. And I didn't go to church or anything back then. That wasn't part of my environment growing up. My dad went to Catholic church, mm-hmm. and my mom never went to church because she was sick, and she had diabetes and arterial sclerosis, and so she just stayed home. She couldn't go anywhere. So us kids, helped take care of her, when we were all growing up. So that's when I had to come home from Thailand. She was 60 years old when she passed away back in 1974. So, but my dad lived to be 91, and he didn't die passed away until 1996. And so while I was working out at the Cape, I met after my wife passed away. We went up to my daughter's house in the Panhandle, and I happened to meet my present wife. She was my daughter's next door neighbor, and we got along really good. And so we started seeing each other, and she's the one that introduced me to the Lord.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah.
So she moved down here with me and my kids, and she was a regular. She went to church regularly, but I didn't. So we went and more or less church shopped, so to speak. And then I found one day we were going back from shopping, and I saw this one church, and I said, "Hey, let's go stop there and go to that one on Sunday." So that was First United Methodist Church in Cocoa. So we went there, and I just fell in love with the pastor. He was so amicable, down to earth. He wasn't stuffy at all. And I said, "Wow, I should have started going to church a lot sooner." But I guess he was the catalyst, and I got saved when going to the church with him, and I've been going there for like 8 or 9 years now, and I'm still at that church, and I work up in the audio video booth now, so I enjoy doing that so much. I mean, it's before I started doing that, since I worked in television operations at where I work, I looked back in the booth. I was sitting, with the congregation. And I looked back in the booth, or up in the booth. I said, "I wonder how I can get a job up there." And all of the guys that were up there then, they were all in their 80s. I said, well, the only way I'm going to get up there is through attrition. So my pastor came to me one day, and I asked him, "How do you get a job up there in the booth?" He said, "You want a job up there?" I said, "Yeah, that would be awesome." So he said, "Okay." He said, "You got a job up there if you want it." And I've been up there ever since.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so
go
ahead.
When you look back over your life and you see the things that you've been through, even as a child, and what is one of the things that stood out to you that you still carry now in your adulthood?
I still carry with me my dad. His the way he looked at things, he was passive, but he was one of the most loving people that I've ever known, and that stuck with me. And he always tried to do everything, do it the right way the first time, and I've always tried to do that myself, so following in his footsteps. And he was a great joke teller, but there's too many of them to go on here. I remember one time there was the 11 o'clock news came on, and there was a story about somebody broke into somebody's house up in Cleveland, which is about 50 miles away from where we live.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking, hey, we don't lock our doors. I better go ask my dad, why do we don't lock our doors? So next day when he came home from work, I said, Dad, we don't lock our doors at night. How's come? I says, I saw, a news story about somebody broke in, to that house up in Cleveland. Don't you think they'll start coming down this way? He said, well, I'll tell you. He says, somebody tried to break into our house. They'd walk in the door. They'd look around and feel sorry for us and want to leave us something. So I said, okay.
When you said that reminded me of my childhood too, growing up.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly how we lived.
Uh-huh.
We lived with our doors open. We slept with our doors open all day long.
Yeah. The only time we closed our doors was to keep the mosquitoes out.
Yeah. You said you have a saying that you carry along with you, and it talks about being true to yourself, and share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was doing some reading one day, and I came across this book. His name escapes me right now. But the saying that he said was, be yourself, everybody else is always already taken. Oscar Wilde is who it was that said that. And I thought that was so prophetic. I said, wow. Yeah. I mean, don't try to be somebody you're not, because if you try to be somebody you're not, people are just going to see straight through that. And you're only hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I try to do. And let's see. When I was growing up, also I pretty much had the run of the city. I mean, there was only 20,000 people in our city, more or less a town. But I never tried to get in trouble. I knew what was wrong, and I stayed away from trouble. But, I went around with my friends and stuff like that. And the most excitement we did was we would, on Saturday, we would mow a couple of lawns, and then we would go over to the pizza place and buy a quart of soda. And we would sit there on somebody's bank, and we would eat the whole pizza and drink a whole bottle of soda. We were so stuffed.
Oh my gosh. Times has changed so much.
Yeah.
What you would like, is there anything else that you would like to say to some of our listeners who's listening today, whether it's family values or anything that will encourage them to?
I would say there's a little voice that you may hear inside of you. Listen to that voice. It's God. It's the Holy Spirit. You should pay attention to it because they're never wrong, and they'll never steer you in the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about that, quite often, and I don't like not thinking about that. So
is that is that a way that you maintain your peace and your direction and your purpose in life?
Yeah, I'm even with all the military and stuff like that, being security police and that helps me stay grounded. So I was never in combat or anything. I almost was one time. When I was in Thailand, we had some communist Thais try to get over our fence, and we had to set up a 25-man blocking force. Mm-hmm. And if they would have climbed over the fence, we had orders to take them out, mm-hmm. because they were carrying explosive charges. They were trying to get in to the base to blow up our B-52s. Mm. So, and like I said, this was back in 1974. So that was the tail end of the Vietnam War. And the B-52s that we had there were the ones that came back from a run, a flight over in Vietnam. So we had to protect our assets. Thankfully, we didn't have to shoot anybody. Mm. We sent some illumination flares up, and they saw them, and I don't think they saw us, but they got scared, and they took off. So,
yeah, I had the stuff. That's what it was.
Yep. So we were ready. We were ready to engage if we had to, but I'm glad we didn't.
Jim, you had a very interesting life, not only childhood and upbringing, mm-hmm. and definitely you seem to be a very strong man of faith and family man as that. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you regret not doing or not accomplishing?
I should have started going to church a lot sooner. But I did when I was in basic training, and that was partly because that was our only freedom, on the weekends. Mm-hmm. But I shouldn't have also listened to myself, because when right after my first marriage, we started going to church once in a while. And every church that I went to at the time, the pastors would say, well, you should do this because this religion, they don't do that right. We do it right, but they don't do it right. And then the second thing was, we want money. We want money. We want money. So is that all they talk about? Is running the other religions down, and want money? So that kind of shied me away for a while.
Discouraged you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It happens.
So, yeah,
especially when you're.
And I was in my 20s too.
Young, starting out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now I think a lot differently. I'm glad I had the Lord on my side.
Yes, sir. You sound to be a very wise man.
Well, I try to stay out of trouble.
Hey, that's a plus nowadays.
Yeah. So, yep. I can't think of anything else that stands out other than I have 3 wonderful daughters. And my oldest one is 50. She lives in the next town over.
Jim, we got to bring you back again. You have so much that you would like to share, and we want to listen to you, but we're in closing.
Oh, okay.
You have listened to Jim, and you've also tuned in to Live with Necee. I'm your host, Opal Bailey. God bless you.
Thanks for having me.
You.